Hey there, Dylan Reich here. Hope you're having a good day. I realized that I haven't made a video in some time, so I thought I've got a little time. I got my cup of coffee. I'm going to press record, and I'm just going to start talking, and we'll see what happens. Okay, I thought we'd talk a little about music theory. Okay, not anything specific, but more like just a broad conversation, because this is a subject that some people have a very complex relationship with, and I thought I'd just address a couple of the most common questions that get thrown my way regarding music theory. So let's dive in. The first question is, when I'm writing music, do you use music theory or your ear? And speaking for me, I do not see theory and your ear as opposites, okay? I don't think you have to make a choice. I recommend you are always going to use your ears at all times. This is music, after all. So I love theory. I will use theory, but I will at no point stop using my ears. Okay, theory might suggest something to me or take me down a path to explore, but ultimately my ear is the final judge of everything. So if I don't like the sound of it, I'm not going to use it, right? I cannot think of a single scenario where I would make a musical decision based on some kind of theory if I didn't like the sound of it. Okay, so I would say learn the theory, use the theory, but always use your ears. You don't have to choose one or the other. You don't switch your ears off to use theory. Keep them on always, right? Your ears are the final judge. That's where I stand on that one. Next question. Won't music theory just make me follow the rules? All right. Sometimes people get very worried that music theory is going to ruin all their creativity, take away all their individuality, and leave them like a robot that just follows the rules. No, it should never be like that. Okay, there are no rules as though things you have to do. This is the right, this is the wrong, and no one's going to force you to do anything. If you like a note, it's the right note. Put that note in your song. It's your music. You do whatever you want. Now, I have a hunch. I've done no research into this. This is just my own hunch, that at least part of this disconnect that's within this question comes from simply the definition of the word rules. Okay? There are no rules like I said, right and wrong, things you have to do. But there are rules in a different sense. So imagine if I said something to you like, if you mix blue and yellow paint, you get green. Okay? That's how that works. That's kind of a rule. If you do this, you get this result, right? It's consistent. It's not like one day you're going to get orange and the next day it's green. It's always green. That's the rule. That's how it works. Those two colors make green. That's the rule. But it's not a rule like you must mix yellow and blue paint. Those are the rules. Follow the rules, right? That's not that kind of rule. It's a different kind of rule. So maybe a better way of saying it is there are rules, but you choose when and if you follow them. Are you with me? So in our paint example, knowing how to get green paint is helpful. Let's say we're painting, right? It's helpful because if we want green, we know how to get it. That's great. We don't have to stumble around in the dark. We can go straight to our vision. And likewise, if we don't want green, it's still great because we don't have to waste time mixing yellow and blue together because we know that's going to be green, right? Either way, it's going to shorten the distance between our vision and our output, okay? So that's kind of where I land on that. There are some rules, but really you're in charge of when and however you use them. You know, this reminds me, I did study music. I did a degree once upon a time. And I remember the very first day of it, may have even been the first class. The teacher stood at the front and he said, we're going to spend the next year and a half learning all the rules of music. And then we're going to spend the next year and a half after that breaking every single one of them. Right? And I remember thinking that that was a great thing to say on day one, because it really framed the whole journey and the whole process, as well as it already lined up with the way I felt about this stuff anyway. So it was never taught to me in a way like, you have to do this. This is the way. This is the way. The only way, you know? It was always like, we'll teach you the stuff. Like, we can learn reharmonization and chord extensions and writing 4-part harmony and all that stuff. We'll do all the things. But then once you've learned them, it's up to you however you want to use it, right? So if you ever need that stuff, if you need those skills and that knowledge, you've got them. You can do it. If you don't need it for something you're doing, don't use it. Do something else, right? That's the way I teach. Is I call it tools in the toolbox. All these different concepts are different tools in my songwriting toolbox. And of course, you don't have to use every single one on every job you're doing. You use the ones you decide that you need, okay? So that's my long-winded way of saying there sort of are some rules, but you're in charge of when and how often and even if you use any of them. Okay, you're in control. They are tools to help you, right? They are rules that will serve you. You're not a slave to them, right? You're in control. Okay, think of it that way, and I think you'll be fine. What's next? I tried learning music theory, and I just hated it. Got any ideas? All right, so this is something that comes up once in a while. You know, somebody just finds music theory to be so overly intellectualized, so disconnected from music and creativity and all the things they love about it. It just feels like we're studying algebra suddenly, and they can't connect these dots, and it's just boring. In a format like this, I obviously can't speak to everybody's individual situation, but I can speak to some of the more common trends that I've seen. And one thing that sticks out is sometimes a lot of people learn music theory in a way as though they are trying to pass a test, right? Remember as many terms and names and dates and numbers as possible because it could be on the test tomorrow, you know, that kind of thing. So I'm going to run an analogy by you, and this is in my mind because I was just talking to a student about this the other day. But I'm going to throw an analogy at you, and hopefully it's just memorable enough that it might float around somewhere in the back of your mind, so that if you ever find yourself drowning in this particular river, you've got something to cling to. Okay, so I want you to think about a word. I want you to think about the word bicycle. Okay, think of that word, bicycle. Okay, now here's the thing. Stay with me. The word bicycle is not, in fact, a bicycle. Okay? Stay with me here. Stay with me. Right, so we have a bicycle, the actual thing that you can touch and hold, and you can pick it up, you can ride it. And then we have the word bicycle, which is the label that we have given to this thing. Okay? So I could learn the word bicycle. I can learn how to spell it correctly. I can learn its origin. Bi means two, cycle means one, revolution, whatever. I can learn who invented it, its role in various cultures, its history, etc., etc. I can go down this rabbit hole for days. All of that's great, but none of that necessarily means that I have the first clue how to ride a bike. Okay? There is a difference, okay, important. There is a difference between learning how to label and categorize and analyze and contextualize something versus learning how to actually use the thing that we're even talking about. Okay? Different. Now, there's nothing to stop us doing both. We can, of course, do both, but nevertheless, these are different things. And the reason I bring this up is because a lot of people's relationship to learning about music reminds me a little bit of this, where they get so lost in the weeds of the language and the jargon and the formulas that they actually forget to spend much, if any, time with the actual things that all of this language is describing. Does that make sense? Okay, so a musical example might be, if you asked me, Dylan, what is mixolydian, right? That's a fun musical word, right? Mixolydian. I might be able to answer that and say, hey, I know that. Mixolydian is the fifth mode of the major scale, and its formula is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, flat 7. Okay? And it's legitimately good to know that stuff. And you might say, Dylan, that's great. Wow, you really know that stuff. Okay? But just like our bicycle example, just being able to know that it's the fifth mode and being able to recite these facts like trivia doesn't necessarily mean that I know what any of that sounds like. What does it sound like? This is music theory, okay? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? Can I recognize it if I hear it? Can I use it to create something? Can I use it to express something? Can I use it to make the listener feel something? Have I spent time with it and played around with it and developed a relationship with it and internalized it to the point where it's part of my vocabulary? So that if I was just to sit here, play, and allow myself to dream, that may well be part of it because that's a part of me now, right? There's a big difference between that and can I just remember that it's the fifth mode, right? And like I said, like I'm passing a test. Mixolydian is what? A, fourth mode, B, fifth mode. B, select, got it, right? There's more to it, right? Every one of these words that you ever heard in music, major, minor, suspended, legato, rubato, diminished, 7/8 time, whatever, all the words you've ever heard, every one of these words actually just describes an actual musical thing, some actual sound, something to do with pitch or melody or harmony or rhythm or form or tone or tempo, something, right? So if you feel completely if it feels like you're just memorizing a dictionary, then the first troubleshooting spot I would hit is, are you connecting all that language to the actual thing that we're talking about? The actual musical thing. Can we hear it in terms of music? Does that make sense? The sound. All right, so I have no problem with learning the language. I think there is a lot of benefits to having a common language. Without a language, it is very, very abstract, okay? Imagine this. There's this sound, that other sound, this different sound, that sound that's kind of like that sound, but slight variation, and then this different sound. It's very, very abstract and hard to pin down. Having a language gives us a way to define all of this. Major, minor, tempo, it's in a key. It kind of gives you, it's like having a mental filing cabinet to sort all of that stuff, right? So that we can access it whenever we need it, and it's all in its own kind of place. It's also very useful when we have the same language, right? So if you said to me, this song is in the key of G minor, I know what that means. If you said, Dylan, can you add a ninth onto that chord? I know what that means, and I can do it, right? We can, if we're working on a project together, it can help us just get where we're going by having a way to communicate. Another thing that's helpful is the more you know, this is not just music theory, but really anything, but the more you know, it's like the easier it becomes to learn even more stuff because you have the foundational knowledge. So you might watch a YouTube video and somebody says, hey, here's a quick tip. Next time you're writing a song in a major key, try adding the flat 6 major 7 chord resolving to the 1. It's really cool. Take care. Right? So if you know what all those words mean, you can actually absorb the information in that lesson. And you can say, oh, hey, I've got a song in a major key. Let me try that. Flat 6 major 7. Wow, that's really cool. Glad I watched that video. I'm going to remember that little trick. Okay? If you don't know what any of that means, flat 6 major 7 in a major key resolving blah, 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 what the hell? Right? It all sounds like Swahili, and it's a barrier between you and the actual information that's in that video, right? So knowing the language it gives you that scaffolding of knowledge that allows you to build more and more, right? So there is a lot of value to learning this language. But what I'm trying to say here is don't forget that the language is not the thing. The language describes the thing, which in my opinion is the sound. Okay? Now, I should say that everybody's relationship to music is their own. Okay? So I cannot really sit here and say there's a right or a wrong. Some people love theory because they just love theory. There are people that enjoy seeing the patterns and the math and looking at it all on paper. That's great. Okay? There's not a right or a wrong. The only problem is when there's a misalignment with what you're practicing and where you're focusing your attention and what you hope to get out of it. Okay? So if you want to learn theory just because you want to learn it, go ahead. That's great. Right? But you've got to understand that learning some piece of theory is not going to make you a better guitar player unless you take that theory and you apply it to the guitar in multiple ways. Okay? Learning some piece of theory is not going to make you any more creative unless you take that theory and create something with it. Use it to write something. That piece of theory is not going to help your ear develop any better unless you take that theory and actually listen to it. Listen to yourself play it. Listen to how other songwriters have used it. How has it been used throughout the years in various genres? Listen to it and internalize it, and then it will help develop your ear. Okay? Don't forget the music part of music theory. All right, I do have a guitar with me, so let me try a practical example of some of this. So earlier we were picking on Mixolydian, so it could be anything, but let's do that. I think it's great to know the word Mixolydian. It's great to know it's the 5th mode. It's great to know the formula. It's great to be able to write it down. All the rest of it. That's good stuff. I recommend we do it. But let's not forget, let's not leave out the actual sound of it, right? Don't forget the music part of the music theory. This sound. remain connected to the sound and the music, all of a sudden there's more motivation to even remember the word Mixolydian, right? Because it's not a random word in a group of 500 words. That's the word for this really awesome sound. That's Mixolydian? Okay. That's what we call that. Awesome. Now do you know what I mean? You're more motivated to remember it. It has more meaning because it's not just an airy, fairy word. It's a word that you've actually attached to something musical. Do you get what I mean? Okay. So that is what I would work on if you are feeling like music theory is over there and music is over here. We want to bring these things together, join them up. And then I think you'll start to have a different relationship. All right, there you have it. There's my public service announcement on music theory, my 2 cents. Remember, I'm just one guy with one set of experiences, and that's where I personally land on some of these questions. I would like to know what you think, okay? If you're someone that loves music theory, what do you love about it? How has it helped you? And if you hate music theory, what do you hate about it? And how have you tried learning it? And what was the result? And have I said anything in this video that's given you something to think about? Let me know. I'd love to hear it and continue the discussion. Until next time, have a great day. See you later.